Um, Hello once again. It's me, Ryan. Um, Welcoming you to another video on my YouTube channel that I've tagged behind closed doors. Um, First of all, I want to appreciate you. If this is your first time watching any of my videos, um, thank you for taking the time to do that, and you're welcome to this family. Um, my objective is to make this big enough where I can as long as my body is able to, um, I'll be able to live stream so that I get so you could want to you might want to ask me a question or two regarding something I've spoken about. You may want to share your perspective or share a story. Um, you're welcome to. So that's the goal, to grow this to a stage where I can live stream and also have people come in and share their perspectives, experiences. Of course, with no judgment at all. Um, yeah, and then thank you for those who have subscribed. I would appeal that at the end of this video, please subscribe. It's not just enough to watch it and give me the thumbs up. I appreciate that. However, I would ask that you subscribe and like the video. That's just the only way you can grow. I also want to thank those of you who have given me constructive criticism. Phoenix, thank you. Rock Code, thank you. Yeah. So again, I'm not one to be dissuaded by spiteful or hateful comments. The truth is, it it's not like I don't read comments. I do. It just takes a while, because the notifications are not turned on, and then my email is there. Like I said, the goal is to grow this to a platform where I can live stream and have people call in, because there's a lot. I'm just sharing my own story, but people everywhere, the people who have gone through similar or even worse. One thing I learned early in life is that life is all about learning, and the only time we stop learning is when we are 6 feet under. Well, for those who want to be buried, I've always said I want to be cremated. I don't want to take up somebody's land. That's just me. Yeah. So, yeah, feel free to send in a comment or a remark, and I would respond to you. I promise I will. But I will not be drawn into any debate, because for now the content is exclusively mine. I'm just telling my story about my life. Yeah. So Socrates said this. A man. Oh, before I go into the quote by Socrates, the minimum, I think, for YouTube for you to live stream is 50 subscribers, and I think we're already halfway there. So thank you once again, a very big thank you. Yeah, share it, and don't just stop at watching it and giving me the thumbs up. Subscribe and like. They go hand in hand, and for now it's free. I mean, the people who I don't know what I was watching a couple of hours ago. I think it had something to do with the U.S. military. And I think it was on Instagram. But to subscribe, they're charging a fee. So I would say get on board now. Don't despise the days of little beginnings. Yeah. So again, my name is Ryan. My friends call me Reds. So Socrates said this. He said, "A man who finds a good woman is a happy man, and a man who finds a bad woman A man who finds a bad woman is a philosopher. And I hope you catch it there. Let it sink in. And so I tend to describe myself to my friends that I have a doctorate in philosophy, because I'm speaking from um, the backdrop of two divorces, two failed marital relationships. Um, could I have done any? Could I have done things differently? It says it takes two to tango. Could I have done things differently? Possibly, but I stand today to say that I have no regrets. I wouldn't change anything. Um, yes, I would start with my first, and I have the permission of my kid, and all she said was, Daddy, don't go too deep. And I said I'll try. Um, yes, I talked about my last video was on, I was trying to make the clear distinction between being a virgin and being celibate. And with regards to rent, I called one of my buddies, Atani, and the first time I spoke with him, he was taking a walk, a morning walk, just to stay fit, because I think he does a sedentary job. But he's doing really well, and I'm really proud of him. We're roommates in college. And he said he'll call me back. And he called me back. Well, the time I called him, and I called him from the restroom, and he was driving, I think. And so I told him, I said, I'm calling from the restroom, and he said, "You called me from the restroom and you're talking to me?" I said, "Yeah, As we're talking, I said, because usually when I need assistance to get on the toilet bowl, because I just tend to drop down when I want to sit. So I need assistance, and every time I sit on the, to do number two, I always have numbness and pins and needles. So I need assistance standing up, and of course I have a cane in the bathroom. I have cane strategically located in my apartment. So so I was talking to him, and I said, okay, so I have to let you go. Someone's coming to help me. Someone's going to help me wipe my butt. And he said, "You can't be by yourself," And he was shocked, because I just said it glibly. That's how I am. I tend to be direct and blunt. And I think then it kind of caught him unawares. Because I don't. Yeah, scripture says, like Paul, I'll brag all the more about my weakness so that the strength of God is made manifest. I don't talk about what I go through. Once in a while I just let things slip, and then people say, "Really, how are you managing that?" And so he said, you require assistance. I said, "Yes, I have continence sheets on my bed, I have pull-ups. I recently got a nebulizer in addition to my CPAP machine. But again, I have no regrets. Yes, some days it's really bad. Like yesterday was really bad. Usually when I have to go to the when I have to go grocery shopping, usually I just do delivery. But the funds are not there, so I can't afford to pay $9.95. I think Walmart charges $9.95, and then HEB charges $6, $7. And so whenever I have to do that, I use the motorized cart. But because I was with someone very special yesterday, and I was going to be brief. I just wanted to pick up my meds and get a couple of things to meals. And so we went for the shopping cart, and he wanted pizza, and it was I don't like grocery shopping. Anyone who knows me knows that. I don't know if it's because of the trauma I suffered, taking my mom to the market, growing up. And for the love of God, I would be incensed, when she's negotiating, over meat or something. And I'm like, for goodness sake, can you please just buy this? Because my mom was, you dare not take her to the market and sit in the car. Are you crazy? So I think, from there, I just had a dislike for shopping, and so we had to go look for pizza, frozen pizza. It was at the other end of the store, and by the time I got halfway, I knew that it was gonna be bad, but somehow I was able to make it home, and so I should have done this, before now. I did promise I was going to be consistent. I was going to start with one video every week. So it's easy. Most times we fall into the trap of cliches. I was speaking to the guy I said I was talking to about rent, if he could do anything. And he said marriage is all about understanding and compromise, and it's true. But then I remember when I used to write, my blog is still theredseas.com. And one of the captions, one of the subjects was, in another man's moccasins. I don't know how to be polite about it, but it rankles me really bad when I'm going through something tough and someone calls and says it's well. When I lost my mom and people were calling and saying it's well. Now, I mean, they had good intentions, but they just were, they were just not listening. What's well about losing my mom, or what's well about having to depend on someone, to groom me? What's well about that? So it's easy for one to say, oh yeah, and now this is I believe he's going to watch it because he said he watched the other one, the last video. So this is in no way a jab at him. But until you have gone through what another man has gone through, don't commit the fallacy of a generalization. Just because you have a good wife, who's understanding and who's there for you, be thankful to God. Be thankful to God, because I started laying the groundwork, with regards to failed relationships, and I got married as a virgin, and in retrospect, people ask me, didn't you see the signs? I said yes, I saw the signs. So I'm just going to go into telling you, at least start with that. My first job was in the banking industry. I worked with a French bank. Back then, it used to be Crédit Lyonnais. Now it's Crédit Agricole. I think it's the 8th largest bank in France. But 2 years into it, I just got tired of it. It was monotonous, and I've always been one who wanted, who liked adventure. And so I knew at that time that I was ready to get married. I had a job, I was self-sufficient, I was able to help people, I had my own apartment, and I knew it was time for me to settle down. And so again, based on my background as an engineer, I had written down a list of like 3 names of ladies that were attractive to me, and I knew their families, and I felt, this, it was a good thing. But one thing most people don't understand is, for something as important as salvation, God doesn't force you. He says, choose you this day whom you will serve. Or before you are two paths. I would, one leading to righteousness and life eternal, and the other leading to death. And I would recommend that you take the path leading to life. It doesn't force us. And so it kind of makes me smile when people come and say, uh, uh, God, is it? Do I believe in soulmates to some extent? Do I believe that everybody has somebody out there for him? Yes. But then Bible tells us that we need to go search. So as men, we do the searching. What God just does is he allows us meet people. And at the end of the day, we are the ones who have to choose. And again, there's an African proverb that says in a hunt, the thrill of the hunt is in the pursuit. So that's what drives men. That's what motivates men. That's what used to motivate me. I would go for that lady who, and I'm not saying anything intimate, but that lady who everyone kind of didn't want to talk to, maybe because the parents are very strict, and the lady was very snobbish or something. I would be the one who would go there. That's always been me. And so 2 years into the job, I just knew it wasn't. So I started asking God for adventure, because I'd always been drawn to the military, and so my elder brother, I have two elder brothers. My immediate elder brother had gotten married a couple of years back to this period, and so I was ready. I was ready. But the question now was, who was the person? And so I had the list. I had like 2-3 names of ladies that I was going to really look into. But it just didn't pan out. And I remember applying to the Navy. There's something called in Nigeria, it's called Direct Short Service Commission, and then because we're colonized by the UK, most times the military has to do training. They partner with the British Armed Forces or the British military, and so the naval. So in the UK, it's called DGE, and then you have to go to Dartmouth. Dartmouth. So you spend just 1 year rather than going through 4 years or 5 years, depending on where. But I already had my bachelor's, my first degree, so I went for the DGE. I was already an engineer, and the Navy needs engineers, and so I had gotten gotten invited. My application was okay, and I was en route for boot camp. And as a rule, I'm an ambivert. Yeah, my dad said I was an introvert, but I choose to disagree with him. I'm more of an ambivert. And so I remember vividly calling the transport service, and they knew me, and I told them that I would love to go to the city, and they should please retain a spot for me, and they agreed to do that. They were really kind enough to do that. And as a rule, I don't really talk on buses, on commercial transport, because you never know who's listening. And this is we're talking about 2004 or thereabouts. Cell phones were still kind of a luxury thing, and so I recall getting to the park, and I got into the bus. and I sat at the last seat, and just just to my left, which is where I would have preferred to sit, there was already someone. So it was just that spot. There were like supposed to be 4 seats there. So I took, from the left, I was the second person. And there was a lady on the left. And everything she did was just a put off for me, because she was on the phone constantly. And I remember that when we pulled off, she screamed. And everybody was like, "What? Oh, my bag." And I'm like, "For goodness sake, you've been talking on the phone all this while. You didn't know you check for your bag?" And then as we were going, I heard a voice. And it said, "You're asking for adventure, right? Yeah, speak to the lady on the left." And I'm like, "I don't do that. Why would I speak to a lady on the bus? I don't do that." And there was this tussle. It took a while. And I was thinking, okay, what do I say? And she had the novel. So I asked her, "So what are you reading?" And, so I started a conversation with her. And like I said, everything she did was a turn off for me, And I recall that, like I said, she was on the phone constantly. And I'm like, for goodness sake, you don't even know who's on the bus. Can this call not wait? And she asked me what I was doing. I said what my job was, and I didn't to tell ladies I worked in a bank, because I wanted the attraction to be more than just money. But then again, the Bible says that many are the plans in a man's heart, but God's decree stands sure. And I've learned that when God tells us something, or when God tasks us something, sometimes we're too much of being in a hurry, that we do not wait to get precise directions from God. When He says, "Hey, I want you to go north," you just start running. You don't know whether He wants you to go 100 kilometers or 10 miles. And then you have to do that, and then come back and God, sorry, what are you saying? And so I was battling with that, So we got talking, and like I said, everything she said, everything she did was just a turn off for me. And I was like, God, what? I don't understand. What's this? What's this? Why should I talk to this person? And she was so familiar with the route, because this was late in the day. It was in the night. And so when people were calling their relatives and asking them, to come pick them up, and relatives will ask them, "Where are you?" She'll be the one to say, "We're here," And I'm like, for goodness sake, are you a bus driver or something? How come you know all these stops? And like I said, everything she did on that trip was just a turn off. But I believed I was walking in obedience. And when she was about to get off the bus, so we exchanged numbers. When she was about to get off the bus, that's when it occurred to me, I don't even know what she looks like. I don't even know if she has a false leg. For me, beauty has never been the outward thing. It's always been who you are inside. Can I have a conversation with you? Can we talk are you intelligent enough to motivate me, to make me want to be better? Or do I see something in you do I see a drive in you? But so I was like, I don't even know what she looks like, And so I kind of, craned my neck to see when she was getting off, to see if she was limping or something. Because for me, a guy has different things, Some men are moved by, the bust. Some men are moved by the butt. Some men are moved by the hips. I am a leg person, And so I was trying to, see, what her legs look like. But it was dark. And so I went off, spent a couple of months, in boot camp. But I had promised her that whenever I returned, I would come check on her. Now, one other thing I had told myself was I was not going to get married to somebody from where the city we lived in, because like I said, it was very rough. But for her, she wasn't born in that city, even though she lived there just like me, but she wasn't born there. And so it was like, okay, yeah, I can work with that. And I recall that, when she got off the bus, she was sending me text messages. I didn't even know you could send text message. You could send messages through using a computer. I didn't know that. Yeah, she's asking, had you arrived? What if I'd arrived and all that and all that. So fast forward, like 6 months later, after boot camp, no, not 6 months. It was about 12 weeks. So when I got back to the city, I actually went to their house, and just to tell you how blind or how unsure I was, when I got to the house, it was a very tiny house, very tiny house. It was a 2 bedroom, I think, very small house. When I got there and I asked after her, in fact, when she told me her name, I'm like, for goodness sake, why would parents name a child with this? That's just to tell you that everything she did was just bad to me. But I felt I was following a higher call. And to this day, I tell people, if just one person had told me, don't marry this girl, I would say, I didn't, because I'm obdurate, I'll say, yeah, it's my fault, I didn't. But the truth is, she was so charming. Literally, she could charm the shirt off a homeless man. And when he came to telling lies, Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer, I'd come across that phase, pathological liar. And I read it, but I didn't understand what it meant. She was a pathological liar. The way people draw their breath when to breathe, that's what she would tell a lie. You'd ask her something, the first thing she would tell you is a lie, and you'd have to. She was so proficient in it that if she told you, for instance, it's raining right now. If you told her, hey, you're wet, did the rain beat you? She would tell you, no, I wasn't. I wasn't outside. The rain didn't beat me. I wasn't in the rain. And you're like, but you just coming in. And she would say, no, go ask the property manager, or go ask the lieutenant general of the state. He was the one who dropped me off. So that's how charming she was. That when she told you a lie, you'll begin to question your own self. And so when I got to their place, she actually sent out her younger sister. That's just to tell you that I really didn't see her well. She sent out her younger sister, and I started talking to her younger sister, thinking she was the one. And then she came out laughing, ha 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 ha. And then we just carried on. Little did I know that she was becoming a problem to her folks. With regards to promiscuity and all that. Little did I know. I just walked into a hunter's trap. There were certain things, like I said, people ask me, did I not see the signs? Yes, I did. One of the things I told myself before I got married was that I had made provision for infidelity on my wife's part. Now, does that sound crazy? Yes, it does. But I don't like surprises, and we're all human beings. We tend to make mistakes. And so I'd already made provisions that, she might stray, And so if she did, and she came back and she was really remorseful, we'd go on. And even before we got married, so let me recap. She wasn't even on the list. Okay? And so we just, started talking, and she was always traveling. Like I said, she was a handful. I didn't even know this behind the scenes. Her mother had actually told her that she was tired of her bringing too many men, different men to their house, to their home, and she had given her that year to get someone. I didn't know this, Like I always say, there's so much to life that meets the eye. And so it was like, this young Christian, upwardly mobile, had his own car. And the mother was like, I'm not letting this one go. And so there I was thinking, okay, I found someone, um, and so we dated for about 6 months, and then I proposed, but I didn't kneel down. I'm old school, but I didn't kneel down. I just brought out my ring and I showed it to her. But prior to this, I had it's always good to try and find out about someone, especially if it's someone you want to settle down with. You need to know their home, what their home looks like, what the dynamic between the parents look like, because inadvertently a daughter would always look like would grow to be who her mother was. And both her parents were active in the church. They were attending a church that my aunt actually had helped found. So eh, but I did this. She was always traveling, and I said, "Why are you always traveling?" And she said, she needed to go tidy up her her final results. The lecturer was holding out on her, and he wanted to sleep with her. And I said, "Give me the guy's name and let me know where I can find him. That's who I am." I said, "No, no, no, I'm fine. He will do it. He will do it eventually." And so one of the days, I didn't tell her. I took a trip to her university, and so this was me. This was me who I had worked. I knew I'd worked in the corporate sector, and being in the military and all that. So my high school mates, some of them call me James Bond because of the way I compartmentalize and the way I act. And I remember getting to the university, and lectures were over, and I knew her department, so I went to her department first. She wasn't there, and so I started asking around, because she wasn't living in a school hostel. She was living with her uncle, her mother's elder brother, who was a professor in the university. She was staying with them. So I went to her department and she wasn't there. And I asked somebody, I said, "Have you seen her?" And they said, so they directed me to where she was. And I still remember to this day, I was embarrassed because I walked in and she was talking with this lecturer. I mean, there was nobody in school. It was just both of them, and it was just wrong. And she was like, "What are you doing? Why didn't you call me? What, Well, first impressions, I was like, man, nah, nah. And the guy she was talking with was an echist. He was a lecturer. And he had this snazzy coupe. What was it? I can't even recall what brand. And so she introduced me to him, and he said, "Okay, okay, let's go out and eat." So he turned into a chauffeur, and I'm like, "Who is this guy?" I came here to meet this lady, so he refused. This man refused that I would lodge in a hotel, because that's what I always do. He said rather, that as lecturers they had what they called guest houses for lecturers, and so he paid for a room. Now, mind you, it was an apartment with, I think, 3 rooms, and so he paid for a room. So we went for lunch. He paid for lunch. I said I was going to the hotel. He said, no need. I'll get. I've already gotten a place. So I'm like, okay. So we got to the guest house, and I was thinking he would go into, maybe he got in the entire apartment. He just got one room. So 3 of us were in one room. And I was getting frustrated. I was getting not frustrated, but I was getting really, really upset. What's with this guy? And he stayed we're in the same room, and I said, okay, I want to see what's gonna happen. So I pretended like I pretended like had fallen asleep, because I wanted to know what was going on. And when they thought I was asleep, they kissed, and and I just told myself, okay, this is the end of it. But I didn't say anything. Woke up the next day, the guy was still there, and he took me to the park. And so when we got to the park, and I got down, thanked him, and so she came down to walk me to the vehicle. And when I just before I boarded the vehicle, I turned around and I told her, I said, you know what, whatever we have, it's over. Now, mind you, before this, I had already opened a joint account with her. We were not, I remember the lady who opened the account asked me, who is this person? I said, no, just somebody I'm dating. And she said, you're dating, you're married, and you want to have an account with her. I said, yes. That's who I am. People, you don't get married because you are lonely. You don't get married because you don't trust somebody. You actually get married because you want to build a relationship based on trust and understanding. And so the lady who opened the joint account was like, what's wrong with you? What if she takes all in? When I said, what if she does, that's fine. So I just turned, so back to the trip. So I turned at the bus and I told her, I said, everything we have is over. And she was like, well, what did I do? What did I do? And she was trying to kneel down and park. I said, you're causing a scene, and I don't like drama. And so in my mind, I had, it was done. I was done with it. What else did I need? And so I got back, and I was telling, a friend of mine who I kind of looked at like an elder brother. We attended the same university too, and he was working in um, an oil company, one of a very big oil company. He was doing very well. But the crazy thing about this thing was, I'm a homebody. So he was the one who would come and say, hey, Ran, let's go hang out. So we'll go, go to a bar, go to an out place, just drink and just talk. But one thing I knew about this chap was when he was in university, he was a very intelligent chap, very, very intelligent. He was kind of low key, but then he came to this city. Like I said, the city I grew in was debatably one of the roughest in West Africa. So he came over to the city, and he was earning very well. He left a good job just to take the second job. And there was no time I went to his house that I didn't see a new girl. And he would tell me, he said, hey, when he needs to go on training or something, he would tell, the girl, whoever he was being intimate with then, to come. And if the girl wanted to pack a bag, he'll tell her, what are you packing the bag for? Where are you going to? He will make it clear. He made it direct. I'm not taking you there to go show you the town. I'm taking you there so that we, whenever I come back, be ready for me. That was him. So talk about surround yourself with, when the Bible says there's safety in the multitude of counsel, the counsel has to be wise, because if you surround yourselves with people who are not, this guy wasn't a Christian, and so in retrospect, I'm asking myself, why did I even listen to him? So I asked him, so I told him, I narrated the whole thing to him, and I said, I'm done with. And this chap told me, so you want to just break up like that? Do you know how difficult it is to get somebody who you want to marry? Give her a second chance. And I listened to him. So when she came back, she told me, so I said, you can delete so I said, I need you to cease every form of communication with this chap. So she told me, yeah, I've even deleted his number, not knowing that I had already memorized his number. And so one of the days I picked up her phone, which is something I don't advise people to do. So I don't even know what I was doing then. But I picked up her phone and I found out that she had She had deleted his name, but she had stored his number under a different name. But I remember this guy saying, the relationships I had, are you just going to throw away all these months just because of this little thing? And yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And I remember telling her, she would tell her mom, she was traveling, but she'll come spend the night in my house. And like I said, no, I don't care what you do. I'm not going all the way with you. So nothing. And she told me to, she too was a virgin and all that, blah 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 blah. Talk about courtship. People just put on their best behaviors and all that. But I had an issue with, her phone. She was always on the phone, and she always had somebody. I'm speaking with my cousin. I'm speaking with my lecturer. It was just a lot. But I still pushed through. And I remember that when I eventually told the parents, okay, these are my intentions. Back then, it's the duty of the bride's father to provide, a list of things that, I need to bring. And this man brought the list and gave it to me and told me I should go through it. And anything I didn't like, I should cancel it. I told him, I said, no, it's not done. Tradition or culture demands that you just give it to me, or give it to my dad, or give it to whoever is my father figure. And then, we'll sit down. But the man said, no, 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 no. I'm the oldest in my family, so anything you don't like, just tell me and I'll strike it off. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. So in retrospect, I'm just looking at, it was like the trap being closed. I didn't know, I thought, it was bad, yeah. It was really bad. And I had told her, I said, listen, okay, these are my intentions. I've told your parents and all that. And I said, okay, what's your goal with regards to kids? I said, I just want 1 or 2. And she was like, no, she wants maybe like 3. I said, I'm not doing 3. Maximum is 2. And I said, but this is the thing, okay? When we get married, the wedding, it's a tiring day. Most couples don't even eat, especially the groom. If it's the groom who's sponsoring the wedding, because this is the way I look at it. The wedding is the man's first responsibility to prove that you are a man. In the north, you get flogged. My dad used to tell me a story back then that, long ago, like the generation before his, if you told your dad as a man that you were ready to get married, they will go buy you a piglet and give you the piglet. And if you didn't cook and eat the piglet within 30 days, then you're truly ready to get married. Now it seems funny, but a pig's natural environment is the gutter. And most human beings don't live in the gutter. And so if you're patient enough to know that this is the background of the pig, this is what the pig is, and this is who, you can't change it, and you're able to tolerate it, then you are truly ready, And so I told her, I said, the wedding, for most weddings, especially when it's not today, where the girls, the bride's father does everything. No, for me, I didn't. It was my money. I knew how many guests. I remember having falling out with my mom because I told her I wanted only 300 guests, and she was really active in the Catholic Church, and she was like, "No, I'm bringing this. I'm bringing that." I said, "Well, if you're bringing more people, you feed them. This is my budget. This is the number of cards I've made. If you want to photocopy the cards, go photocopy them. If you want to make cards, go make cards. But this is, that's who I am." And so, even when I introduced her to my mom the first time, it was bad, But like I said, she was so charming that everybody in my family grew to love her. Everybody, including my dad, who who, was was the very cautious one when it came to women. Everyone loved her. Like I said, she was charming. Um, and I said, on the day of the wedding, most grooms are making sure, they're making sure things are checked off. That, have I paid for this? Have I paid for this? So it's rare that you see a man, settle down, except he didn't sponsor the wedding. It's rare for you to see a man who is, very relaxed, and no, you're thinking about all the money you spent, and you're sure that you're getting true value for the money. So I said, we'll both be tired, dancing and greeting people and receiving gifts and all that. So we'll both be tired. So we're not going to do anything that night. I said we can consummate the relationship the next day. Uh, I can't even begin to go into the number of the men I told her stop talking to. I'm not going to stand this. But then it also clarified something. So the scripture says that there are some who are predestined for destruction, and it was kind of tough for me to grapple with. A God who loves everyone, who loves creation, and yet He says some people are destined for destruction. But His ways are not mine. I look at Pharaoh. Pharaoh said the Israelites should go. I mean, if you're a Christian, sorry, the Israelites. He was the one who said the Israelites can go. And then the moment they left, he said, "No, let's go get them." So there's some people back then. I told myself, when I saw what she was doing and all that, I told myself, I said, I believe that, and again, coming from a Catholic background, divorce wasn't a thing. My parents' marriage wasn't the best then. In fact, it was something I knew that I didn't want to. I actually had to relocate from that city because my mom and I were never really close. And so she'd always want to know who my friends were. And I didn't want her having that access to my wife. So I relocated to another city. Um, but then, so I told her, I said, we wouldn't do anything. What's the rush? We waited, what, 27, I've waited 27, 28 years. What's one more night? People, she refused. She refused. I remember that we stayed in a hotel that was close to the church because, again, my own view was the last honor you could give to your bride's family is to wed her in her parents' church. That's it's something of honor, and so we did that. They were Protestants or Pentecostals. My parents, actually, my dad didn't even come for the wedding because he was upset we didn't have it in the Catholic church. And I said, who cares? I stopped being a Catholic, in a couple of years, even if I got into university. But so my dad wasn't there for the wedding. He did come. He did show up for the reception anyway. But that's just to tell you, all the obstacles I had to overcome. But it was something about me. I'd always been my own person, and if I made up my mind about something, I would go through with it. And this was me thinking, that God had said, "This is the woman you're going to marry." No, 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 no. What I was praying for was for adventure, and I got it in the military. But when he said, "If you're looking for adventure, talk to this lady," I misconstrued it as "talk to this lady. You want to get married? Talk to this lady." So I dropped the ball on that. I'm not going to. I'm one who doesn't like the blame game. It was my call. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna end this. So the night before, so the night of the wedding, she refused, and I'm like, we already discussed this. Mind you, I didn't even know anything about contraceptives. I knew about prophylactics as a guy, and it was through her that I had the first contraceptive, and I'll never forget it. Postino 2. And she said, I've been waiting for this all my life. Okay, let's use contraceptive because I said I don't have prophylactics here. She was like, yeah, let's go get contraceptive? I said, I don't know anyone. She said, I know Postino too. So I recall that we drove from one end of the town, from one end of the city to the other end of the city. This was around midnight, just to get Postino too. And in hindsight, there was no blood. But I just, some of these things, you're busy trying to make everything check out. You're there. So the concession I made, I gave my parents was, we'll do Thanksgiving in Catholic Church. And so, I didn't even, was it tight? Yes, it was. But was there blood? No. But it was just one of these things. That's the thing with the brain. We need to be careful about what we see, because the eyes are the windows to our heart and to our soul. So most times, if you really task yourself, everything you see, you remember. It's just that you have to dig, or you have to have trained your brain to be able to sort through data. So in hindsight, I didn't see any blood, and I knew that the hymen and all that. So went for the so we consummated it on the wedding night, and then we had Thanksgiving, and I didn't know the storm I was going into. I really didn't know. If I knew, I probably would have pulled the plug or stuck with my decision back then. So that's how it started, and then I would continue. But yeah, don't what I would just say is this. When you see someone going through stuff, sometimes all the person needs is just silence. And that's why I love the book of Job. Bible says that when he fell on hard times, that even his wife was telling him to curse God. His three friends traveled from far to come be with him, and for the first 7 days they didn't speak to him. They just mourned and cried with him. And so when this is also with regards to what my friend said about marriage. Marriage, as long as people are willing to, what did he even say? As long as there's understanding. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, you can say it. If you have a bad wife, then I wonder what you will say then. I mean, I'm not wishing him. I know him. I know the wife. We're very good friends. Do they have a perfect marriage? No. There has to be some concession. But I know she's a good woman compared to the one I picked. Yeah. So when you see someone going through stuff, don't be in a hurry to proffer solutions. Sometimes just be quiet first. Just be quiet and let your friend, let the person who's going through stuff be the one to ask you to talk. Most times we're in a hurry to proffer advice. And the Chinese have this saying that the greatest insult you can give to yourself is giving advice that's not called for. So I'll continue this, I'll pick this up later. But thank you for staying through. I know it's longer. But thank you for listening. And please subscribe and like this video and leave a comment, ask a question, drop a question. And just before I go, I'm going to say this. The very fact that you stayed this long to listen to my story, I want to thank you, because it's a sacrifice, and sacrifices are not made in vain, And whatever you're going through, just keep your chin up. Because the fact that you're watching this and you're listening to this tells me one thing, and that thing is that God is not yet done with you. So till the next video, this is me saying ciao, and catch you on the other side. Bye.